The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over different water testing methods. I'll go over comparing test strips with reagent testers and photometers, all the way to the smart monitors and which you should be using on your pool route and in your personal pool. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. I think there was a time when, maybe a couple of years ago, where smart monitors seemed to be on the precipice of taking over the industry as far as water testing. You had the Hayward pHin, you had the Sutro emerging, WaterGuru was always kind of in the background, and sometime in 2020, Hayward had purchased borate, and they were going to launch this product to be a smart water tester. I think they did launch it. I'm not sure if they pulled it back. I don't see it available anywhere. But I did test one of the borate, and I really like that monitor, but I'm not sure what Fluidio is gonna do with that particular tester. And then fast forward to 2023, you have pHin pretty much gone because Hayward dropped the ball on that one when they purchased it. They didn't market it correctly. I think their biggest marketing failure was that it was going to replace your pool service, and the pool pros didn't like that. There was a lot of backlash to Hayward and across all their products. And then pHin just kind of disintegrated. I'm not sure exactly why they let it go, because it wasn't a terrible smart water monitor. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad enough to just let die the way they did. And people that had subscriptions lost all that money. It was a big mess, and that kind of soured people to the smart water monitors. I think the biggest issue with the smart water monitors is the cost of the test. You know, if you get the Sutro, you pay $500 for the unit, and then you have to pay the monthly subscription of, I think it's $30 still. And that's the basic subscription. And the Sutro would give you your free chlorine, your pH, and your alkalinity, and it would also give you your water temperature. So that's a pretty hefty price to pay for 3 readings a month when, you know, you can, of course, use other methods of testing. Of course, it's not as convenient of having the readings at the app, but nonetheless, it is convenient. And then WaterGuru kind of raised the bar this season with their new Sense monitor, the S2. So the S2 does 5 test factors. It does your pH, free chlorine, cyanuric acid, hardness, and alkalinity. It also does the temperature and the flow of the pool. And the only thing that I think is the problem with the Sense is that currently you can get the Sense S2, you can buy one C5 cassette, which measures all those parameters I mentioned. And then it comes to 2 C2 cassettes, which measures this pH and free chlorine daily. So those will last 60 days, and then the other one will last 30 days. So you have 90 days, but in that 90-day period, if you do buy that particular kit, you only get the 5 measurements 30 days out of the 90 days. And I think they're moving towards making it so that you can get 3 C5 cassettes where you do the daily measurements of those parameters. Now, do you need to measure cyanuric acid, the hardness, and alkalinity every day? No, but if they're going to give it to you every day, why not measure it every day? And by the way, the 3-pack that'll last 90 days is about $60. So it's pretty affordable. The actual unit itself is about $300, and then you would just buy the cassettes that would last you 90 days for $60. So to me, it's pretty affordable. I really like the 5 test factors, and I find it to be very accurate. And I think that you'll find it to fluctuate a little bit in the readings, but all in all, I think out of all the smart water monitors, this one has a good level of accuracy. The fact that it does all these test factors brings it to the next level. So where is the next smart monitor going to be? I don't know if they can do much more than what they're doing at this point. I'm not sure if there's like a holy grail of smart monitors where you would get, accurate readings and there would be a margin of error of less than 1%, because there's a lot of factors when it's in your pool. It's floating in the water. It may have different parts of the pool that it reads at certain times. Now the WaterGuru is actually in the skimmer, so it's going to read whatever water is going through the skimmer. And this could also not be accurate because, if you take readings all over different parts of the pool, you're going to get a little bit of a different reading. So that's the major drawback. And with the Sutro, sometimes the turbidity of the water interferes with the reagent because they use reagents in that tester. And I broke open a WaterGuru cassette, and it looks almost like those candies that you used to get that unroll. I guess they're called fruit roll-ups or something. And inside there is different reagents that are kind of rolled together in a kind of snake-like fashion. And that's kind of how it does its testing. It'll just pull one of those. Now, someone mentioned if they could make the cassette just take one reading every 3 days, which would be pretty smart because your water doesn't change day to day that much. So if they can make it have a little gap in the reading, and so the cassette would last longer, but then you would kind of hurt their bottom line, and then you would have problems if you wanted to do like a spot check, because the WaterGuru can actually do a reading on demand, which is really nice too if you wanted to verify a reading. So it does have some good technology. Is there going to be something coming on the market that's going to pass all these up? I don't know if they're spending a lot of effort or energy in these smart monitors, because I think most consumers still prefer using a test kit or a test strip even to check the water chemistry in their pool. So unless there's a big market for these products and the price point drops to where they're fairly reasonable, because $300 is still a lot of money for most consumers to buy a smart water monitor. And with the Sutro price at $500, you're only really going to attract the more elite pool owners for this product. Now the pHin was only $150, I remember, $198 or something like that. It was pretty low. I think it got as low as $150, but then you had a $99 subscription fee. So with the WaterGuru, there's no subscription fee, and also with the Sutro, the subscription fee includes the cassette. So again, these are more of an elite market product, and if you wanted to test your pool water, there's really nothing wrong with the standard way of testing that we've always been doing with test strips, reagent testers, and photometers. So let me go over the pros and cons of some of these normal testing methods, I guess you would say, or non-automated testing methods. And I think I'll start with test strips. Now, test strips over the years have evolved to where I think they're really reliable. However, there is a pretty big margin of error. If you're in a room with 10 people and you ask them what color this is compared to this color, you're going to get all different answers. And so unless you're really good at distinguishing colors, which a lot of people aren't, you're not going to get the most accurate reading because you're the judge of what that reading is. Now, sometimes it's obvious. If there's no chlorine, it comes out white. If you have a lot of cyanuric acid, it comes really dark on the strip. And of course, pH, if it's really low, it'll be light. And if it's really high, it'll be really bright. But the range, other than that, is something that's subjective. So how do you know if it's 7.2, 7.4, 7.6 on the pH? And how would you know if the alkalinity is 70, 80, or 90? You wouldn't know because you're just kind of guesstimating. Is it important to know exactly? In some cases, yes. In other cases, not really. So it just depends on what you need to test for. If you're going to have a pool party and you want to dip it in there to see if the water is safe to swim in, and the chlorine's coming out at 4 or 5 parts per million, to me it's not a big deal. If the pH is coming in at 7.6 or 7.8, not a big deal. If the pH shows 7 or 7.2 or 6.8, that may be a big deal because if someone were to swim in that pool, they may have burning eyes and itchy skin because the body's pH is higher than the pH in the pool at that moment. So that's something you can address. And would you need a more accurate tester at that point? More than likely, you would want some way to test the exact pH at that point if you notice something that off. Now, for commercial pools, if you're doing commercial pool service, test strips are not really approved by the health department. If they catch you using them, they're going to maybe cite you because they would want you to use a reagent or a photometer tester, just for that reason that I mentioned, that there's no way to get an accurate reading spot on. Now, there are some test strip readers out there, but again, the test strip itself is something that may not be the most accurate product. So if you even use a reader, it may not read the correct amount. And they're pretty expensive out there. I think Taylor has one that they're using at pool stores that reads the test strip for you. Again, all that is subjective except for the ones that read them. And then you're just guessing what is actually in the water. Do you really need an accurate reading of the pool every week? It just depends too. Like if you're starting up a pool for the first time and you have new plaster, of course you're going to want to have the most accurate reading possible for the first 3 months so that you can balance that water properly. If the pool is 15 years old and you're just checking it with a test strip, there's really nothing wrong with that. If you're doing pool service and using test strips on your routes 1 week, Reagents on another week, or Photometer on the other week, I see nothing wrong with that either. Because again, the water parameters and certain parameters don't change much week to week. For example, besides free chlorine and pH, the alkalinity usually stays within the same range every week without exception. And if it gets too high or too low, you'll know that pretty quickly if you test it on a regular basis. Back in the old days, we used to test the alkalinity once a month at the pool. And I would say in that 1 month period, it didn't change that much. You probably want to test it every 2 weeks though. Once a month may be a little bit too long in most cases. The pH does change. It does rise or go down depending on the pool surface type. And you have to check that weekly. And I would say that that fluctuates sometimes more than the other readings in the pool. And free chlorine, if it's a saltwater system, or if you have it on tablets and you have a consistent amount of tablets you're putting in there every week, that chlorine reading doesn't change much from week to week unless there's like a heavy bather load or something strange happens. And so the only reading that really changes a lot week to week is the pH in the pool, in my opinion. The free chlorine can change, and so you have to test it every week, of course. And then you have cyanuric acid, the calcium hardness. Doesn't change much at all, nor does the salinity of the pool change that much at all week to week. So what should you be testing for every week? For sure, you should be testing for the free chlorine. If you're in a place where the combined chlorine is important, like a commercial setting, test for that also. And you want to check the pH every week. Alkalinity, maybe every other week. And then the cyanuric acid, calcium hardness, salinity, maybe every 2 or 3 months. So even if you're using a photometer, which I'll get to later, the other test that you're using may not be as necessary as the primary test I went over there. And that's why the smart water monitors that do pH, free chlorine, and alkalinity, like the Sutro and the WaterGuru and the Blue Riot, which does ORP and does pH, are really good because they're doing the basic test that you really need to know what that parameter is every week for you. But that, of course, can be easily done with a test strip, dipping it in there for a fraction of the cost of these smart monitors. And I think therein lies the problem with these smart water monitors, because something that's very less expensive, that takes only a second to do, really does the same thing that they do. Now, of course, they give you the reading almost like a photometer with the exact number, and they send it to your phone, which is nice. But again, that's more for the elite pool owner, I think, and not the everyday person. Now, if you wanted to put a bunch of water gurus at your stops and monitor them in your pool service business, I think their app probably right now has that ability where you can be added on, you can monitor the pools. But again, that's another elite type service, and I think that's something that not a lot of pool pros are going to do because they can easily just test the water with a test strip or with a Reagent tester. So let me move on to the Reagent testers. I think, of course, the premium Reagent tester are the Taylor test kits. Now, they're owned by Fluidra now, and if you're in the industry, you know that at the pool shows, Taylor had a big presence there. They had a booth, and they had all their testers out there. But since Fluidra purchased them, there hasn't been a big presence anywhere. In fact, at the last show here in Los Angeles and Long Beach, they were kind of tucked behind the Fluidra booth, and they didn't have much of a presence. But their test kits are still the best on the market. So I'm not sure if Fluidra needs to market it much, because everyone knows that Taylor makes the best Reagent test kits out there on the market. And really, unless LaMotte starts making a Reagent test kit, there's really no competition for Taylor. You have some off-brand. You have like the Pool Master that uses OTO. And by the way, if you're using a 5-way test kit with OTO, be careful with that OTO solution reagent, because it actually is a carcinogen in most of the world except the United States. So it's kind of banned everywhere but here. I like the OTO because it gives you a bright yellow reading for chlorine up to 5 parts per million, and it's really easy to use. But the Taylor test kit, if you were going to decide between the K2005 and K2006, I think the main deciding factor is what is the use of that kit. The K2005 uses a dye reagent to test the free chlorine, and the K2006 uses a powder, and they call that powder the FAST DPD, and this will give you a chlorine reading as low as 0.2 parts per million, which is like 0, all the way up to 20 parts per million. So if you don't really need to go to 20 parts per million, you can easily get away with using the K2005. I find it to be faster, just as effective. That's the only difference in the reagent. All the other reagents that come in the kit are the same. And the reason why you may want to get the K2006 with the DPD is because if you're doing commercial accounts, you can't go higher than 10 parts per million in California. So if the K2005 only goes to 10 parts per million, you're not going to know if it's 12 or 14. And that could be a problem with a commercial setting if the health department's using a similar test kit and it shows it at 15 parts per million. So you want to make sure that if you're doing commercial pools, you do have the K2006. But if you're doing residential pools, no one's checking on you, and rarely will the chlorine in that pool get above 10 parts per million on a regular basis. And so the K2005 is great for all uses except commercial pools. And I like the convenient reagents. And this is also kind of like a test strip where you're kind of guessing the color. However, the reagents will give you a better range of colors. In fact, I think if you're good at reading colors and you hold it at eye level and you have adequate light, you can get a pretty good reading with the K2005-2006 kit. In fact, they're NSF approved, so that means that they had independent testers do this, and within a margin of slight error, they got the readings pretty good. So they are more accurate than test strips if you read the colors correctly. Now, the last set of testers is the photometer testers, and there's a few on the market that I would recommend to you, depending on if you're a homeowner or if you do pool service. I think LaMotte makes probably the most easiest to use and the premier photometers in the Color Q series. Now, they have a Color Q 2X Pro 7, which is more or less for the homeowner, and then they have the Color Q 2X Pro 9, which does a few more test factors like copper, iron. You can do biguanides in that also. And so the Color Q 2X Pro 9, again, does a little bit more factors. If you're looking for that code, it's the Color Q 2X Pro 9 Plus 2097. That's the order code. And then the Color Q 2X Pro 7 does free chlorine. And by the way, that's DPD also, just like the Taylor kit. But it goes to only 10 parts per million. Then you have the total chlorine, bromine, pH, total alkalinity, calcium hardness, and cyanuric acid. For me, that's a pretty good basic lineup for a homeowner. Now, why is a photometer better than the reagent testers and the test strips? It's better for the one reason is that it uses a photometer, which is a light scanning device that reads the color spectrum, and it'll be able to read the color of the reagent in the chamber and give you the exact readout based on the color that it's reading. So this, of course, relies on the fact that you're putting the right amount of reagent into the chamber, or the test tube, I should say, and then in the chamber it's going to read that amount. And I've done experiments where I added like 7 drops of phenol red. It does change it a little bit, but not like hugely as you would think. It's one of those things where it reaches a certain point, and if you add like 20 drops, I guess it would definitely change it. So if you are a little off a little bit, it's not the end of the world. But 5 drops in each test is what they recommend, and holding it straight up and down so that the drops are equal. And it'll give you a really good solid reading if the reagents are not expired. One thing that LaMotte's moving towards are the tablets because they last longer. And if you're using, my method to test, you're not testing cyanuric acid or alkalinity every week. If they're in a reagent form, they're going to go bad a lot faster. So the kit comes with a pH and a chlorine reagent, because you're using those the most. And then the alkalinity, cyanuric acid, total hardness, copper, iron, and this is for the Color Q 2X Pro 9. They're all in tablet form or pill form. You would break those up, and that would release a pre-measured amount of reagent into the test tube, which makes it more accurate, of course, because there's no user error. And it makes those reagents last a lot longer, and that's why they do the tablets with those tests, because you're not doing cyanuric acid every week at a pool. Is the photometer testing slower than the Taylor K2005 test? Well, yes, it takes you a little bit longer to do because you're putting it in there and it's got to boot up and give you the reading, and you have to crush the tablet, so that does slow you down. However, the 2x version of these, the processor is amazingly fast. It'll give you a reading instantly almost. So it's a matter of you crushing the tablets that are going to slow you down. But you're not doing the tablet test every week. So to me, it's a wash. It's not something that you should be concerned about. I think the main difference is the price point. The photometer kits are a lot more expensive. It's about 4 times what it would cost for the K2005, maybe 5 times depending on where you purchase it. And then the reagents are much more expensive than the Taylor test kit reagent refills, probably about 2 or 3 times more expensive. So the price of the photometer or using it is the only negative thing with the photometer. Now, if you buy the LaMotte Spin Touch, which is their premium tester, it does 10 test factors in 1 minute. The discs are what costs more money. They're like close to $3 now a disc, and so you're spending a lot more money for the tester, but you're getting all those results fast. And that's about $1,000 for that test kit. And there are other photometers available. You have the Exact iDip, and you also have the Pool Lab 2.0, but they're not really on the market widely, or not as widely as the LaMotte photometers. So if you're looking at test kits, you have your Taylor reagent test kits, and then you have the LaMotte photometers, which kind of are the 2 top in their categories. And then test strips are made by various manufacturers. Taylor makes them, LaMotte makes them, AquaChek makes them, and then there's other brands that make the test strips. So there's not really one brand that's better than the other that I can tell. I do like the AquaChek ones. I'm kind of partial to them, mainly because you have a lot of variety in them. And that's one thing I should mention about test strips. They do a lot more testing than you can do with the photometer. In some cases with the reagent tester, you can do a salinity test. You can do, of course, copper and iron with the test strip. You can do borates with the test strip. You can do high cyanuric acid up to 500 parts per million. You can do high chlorine with the test strips, up to, I think, 200 parts per million. So they have much more variety. You can do phosphates with the test strip also. So there is something with the test strips that you can do that you can't do with the reagent tester. And there are some tests you can do with the photometer you can't do with the reagent or with the test strips. And they kind of cross over a little bit. But you'll find that there are more test strips on the market than any other kind of tester. And you can find different test strips for just about every need. Nitrates is another one that you can test for with a test strip. So they do serve a purpose on the market, not just for everyday testing of the water parameters, but also for testing other parameters that you can't get with a reagent tester. There are a lot of options out there. So what I would suggest is a combination. You can get test strips. You can use a reagent tester. You can get test strips with a photometer. You can maybe use a smart monitor in your pool and then check the reading with a test strip. However you want to do it. But I always think you should have 2 different testing methods all the time. In case one gives you an odd reading, you could use another one to test it. Or if you're busy and behind on your route, you can just use test strips that day. But you should have different testing methods. If you're at commercial account, you should definitely have a photometer to kind of counter the health department. And every scenario is different. And so it's up to you to pick the right tester for your pool. And I think I've unpacked these pretty well for you so you can make an educated decision on which particular water tester you want to use for your pool and for your pool route. If you're looking for other podcasts I recorded, you can find those on my website at swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon, and then 1200 podcasts will appear there for you. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguidecoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.